Good morning. Good morning. I hope you are all well. I've seen that there's been somewhat of a following for me to do a video about Asia. So without ado, here I go. The first ethnic region is um, Southern Central Asia. This is an ethnic region which is mostly centered around Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Turkmenistan. The main religion in this area is Islam, as from my understanding, and they have high tensions with the regions to the east, the northern Indians. Um, there's been recent events here regarding terrorist organizations and other political events, geopolitical events. The second ethnic region is Mongolia and northern Central Asia. This is mostly centered around Mongolia and Kazakhstan, including Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, these nations. I think the main thing to say about this region is that it is like obviously very connected to the Mongol Empire and is also the basis for Eurasia, kind of. Northern Asia. Northern Asia is the region which is north of the vast majority of ethnicities in Asia, and is the region that was conquered over a long period of time by the Russian Empire, and is known for being frozen and having the frozen lands of Siberia. Это Siversky, da. What more do I know about this region is that there are many peoples who exist in the northern lands in a kind of form of semi-nomadic lifestyle and have been existing in this cold region for centuries. And also, this is the region where the humans walked from Asia into North America. This is Northeastern China. It is a region which has hosted many cultures and many empires throughout history. Um, it includes the regions which we could possibly call Manchuria, um, Outer Mongolia, or Inner Mongolia. I forget which one it is. And they do speak Chinese here. I know some Chinese, Mandarin Chinese, standard Mandarin Chinese. I have to imagine the Chinese from this region might have variations of specific dialects, but I know that perhaps that in the modern day this region is part of the Great Chonggoren. And also, this is the region where Japanese forces had occupied much of China during World War II, in Manchuria especially, and Manchukuo. Um, and this is probably one of the colder regions of China, and I know that this is the region where there's a hybrid mixing between the northern Chinese people and the eastern Chinese people, which creates the northeastern Chinese people. This might very well be the most industrious region of China, considering it's the northeast where the capital rests, and also the industrial centers of Manchuria and northeastern China. Northern China. This is northern China, a region where I would say probably the northern Chinese gene is still fairly intact because it has less contact with the central and eastern genes of China. It is also known as northwestern China, so closer to I don't know Xinjiang, that region there. When I think about this region, I think about the first Han expeditions in the region, like in the movie Dragon Blade, when they had their Silk Road kingdoms and peoples who were interacting with each other from all over the world, And this was really the great expedition of the Han Empire to build roads out in this deserted region which connected to the rest of the world. Truly an incredible place of and moment of history. This region is Burusho. Burusho is a region which includes southwestern Tibet, southeastern northern Central Asia, northern Afghanistan, and northern Pakistan, and that's about all I know about it. It's actually probably my first time hearing about it, but I also noticed that it includes northern India, and also northern Pakistan, and many other countries around it. It looks kind of circular, like many peoples came together and created this ethnicity. I don't know. I'll learn more about it. Northern India, a very beautiful region with a complex, beautiful history. It has a very interesting culture of and caste systems as well, and it has been the host region of many empires and cultures which have passed through here. Unfortunately for the region, many empires and cultures have come here to take advantage of the region and use it for power and advancement. Ultimately, this region is a beautiful region with a long history, a complicated culture, and we'll see where it goes in the future. I believe in the future that the population of India was likely to overtake that of the population of the nation of China, but who knows? We will see. Southeastern India and Sri Lanka. Well, when I think about that, the thing that comes to mind first are the Tamil peoples. And I know the Tamil language is very interesting because it's the oldest language in the world that's still spoken today. What else do I know at the region? I know that Sri Lanka in the recent days has had some political issues. But other than that, I haven't heard too much about southeastern India. The one thing that comes to mind are the Tamils, and this is probably the region where I feel like a lot of the original DNA of India, pre-Indo-Aryan, is still remaining, considering that this is in the far south, where the DNA is likely to be more preserved. Nepal and the Himalayan Foothills. This region is kind of interesting because there are many mountains, the tallest ones in the world, given Mount Everest. And then, of course, you have the Buddha, came from this region, relatively, those old hills there, the kingdom. Then he was probably in this region when he became to enlightenment of the Buddhism, and also Buddhism is still prevalent in these mountain nations such as Bhutan and Nepal. This is a region mostly I know for Buddhism. This is the region of Bengal. It is a region in the eastern half of the Indian subcontinent, and well, what can I say about it? I know the capital of Bangladesh is Dhaka. Beyond that, I need to learn more about the region. The Dai of Southeast Asia. These Dai are present all over Southeast Asia, but according to my research, I have made the choice to mainly present them existing in the nation of Laos and Myanmar, as well as Yunnan province of China. From what I understand, the Dai are Southeast Asian people, and they exist in a multitude of countries, and make it the majority of the nation of Laos, and they also exist in Yunnan province. This is about the extent of my knowledge on these Dai of Southeast Asia. The Southeast Asian region. Here in Southeast Asia, they have, this region includes the nations of Thailand, Cambodia, Peninsular Malaysia, Indonesia, Western Indonesia, and It includes many cultures. Uh, I once learned some Thai. I don't remember how to speak Thai anymore, but I know they speak some French in Cambodia, and I know some Indonesian. That I do know, like uh Salamat Tinggal. I don't exactly remember what that means, but that's something I remember from Indonesian. Um, has an interesting history. Many kingdoms existed here. Um, this in Cambodia they have Angkor Wat, so that's interesting. That's the ancient temple that is broken down in the jungle in Cambodia. That I think it's made of stone or something. It was part of the ancient Khmer. I think maybe it was Khmer Empire. I don't know. But Cambodia, this region includes Peninsula Malaysia, Thailand, Cambodia. Which the interesting thing about Thailand is that Thailand was one of the only nations in the world or in Asia that was not colonized by Europeans and actually stayed independent for a very long time. One of the only other nations that managed to do this was Japan. Very interesting. Um, Ultimately, this is a region that stretches all the way from Indonesia to Thailand. Many religions, many cultures, many languages, but ultimately these are all part of the same genetic ethnic region. Vietnam. Um, Vietnam is a nation that was colonized by the French and Chinese before them, and in the mid 20th century was divided, had a large civil war where there were many contingents on both sides, and ultimately the French, the Americans, and South Vietnamese lost the war. The North Vietnam took over, secured the whole nation of Vietnam. Something I know how to say in Vietnamese is bande, which is bread, I believe, or ya is house. Um, I'm interested in learning about Vietnamese things, languages, and cultures, and I will likely do so in the coming future. Perhaps there will be more videos about it as well. South China. South China is a region where the language of Cantonese is very popular. Also, there are the cities of Hong Kong and I believe Shanghai is part of this region as well. It is a very important part of China because it draws in a lot of maritime trade, which boosts the Chinese economy, and ultimately this part of China has been the forefront of Chinese maritime expeditions. If I remember correctly, this is the region where the Great Song Dynasty treasure fleets had left from China, had gone all the way to India and to South Africa, and possibly even by rumor to Western North America, but there's not actual proof of that. I actually forgot the name of the leader of the fleet, the treasure fleet, but I remember it was the I believe the Song Dynasty, where the ships went all around the world in their treasure fleets, and they even brought a giraffe from Africa and brought it back to China. And the people in China were so amazed by the things they had brought back on their treasure fleet. Unfortunately, that was the last time the Chinese would treasure search and travel the world in such a way. Central China. This is a region deep in China where the rivers from the sea and begin with the mountains in the central China, closer to Yunnan province. I believe in this region is the city of Chongqing, which is a city in central China, and other cities like it around that region. I believe this is also the region of ancient imperial capitals of China, but I forgot the name of that city. I believe it begins with a she. Ultimately, this is the ethnic region that is at the center of China. This is probably I believe this is actually the ethnicity that was most correlated to the Han. Well, being that I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the capital of the Han was in this region that this ethnicity exists. Beyond that, I know this is probably the heart of China. I believe the name of the city is Xi'an that exists in this region. Yes. I would ultimately call this the heart of China, or the heart of the Han. Tibet in southwest China. This is a region which I would call mostly for its similarity, its large presence of Buddhism, and I would also say that in this region, the southwest Chinese and the Tibetans kind of merge into one ethnic region. If I'm incorrect about that, I am eager for someone to positively correct me. I actually was just finished listening to a Tibetan song. It was pretty nice. I don't know too much about Tibet, but I know that Buddhism is really popular here. That's about it, to be honest with you. And I know there's a lot of desert in this region. There's a lot of desert sand region. This is southwestern China, so there's the Tibetan Desert, the Tibetan Plateau, I believe it's called. And from what I remember about learning about China, is that the Chinese territory land has many levels that go up from the highest point in the Himalayas down to the lowest point at the sea level, which is very interesting to me. But beyond that, I just know Tibet is very popular for its Buddhism. South Philippines. The Philippines is a nation which I know less about, but I know that the capital is Manila, and that's in the northern part of the Philippines. This is the southern part of the Philippines. And I know that there's one large island which is a part of this region, which is called Mindanao, which is, I believe, one of the most southernmost islands of the Philippines. And the Philippines is divided into two ethnic regions, DNA. You have the north, which is more centered around Luzon, and you have the south, which is more centered around Mindanao. How much I know that the Philippines was conquered by the Japanese during World War II. I know that there's a Philippine language called Tagalog. I don't know how to speak it, but I know that there's also Spanish is pretty popular in the Philippines. The Philippines was a part of the Spanish Empire, that I know, and the Philippines also had a war with the United States sometime. Maybe it was the 1930s. I think maybe earlier. Maybe it was more like late 1800s. But ultimately, this is the southern part of the Philippines, and the DNA region mostly centered around the island of Mindanao. Northern Philippines. The Northern Philippines is the region of the Philippines, or the DNA ethnic region of the Philippines, where the capital Manila is. This is also a region which is heavily centered around the region of Luzon, and obviously Japanese, Spanish, Americans, all these people came to this land. This is where Luzon is. I believe Luzon is, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, is the largest island in the Philippines, if I'm not mistaken. And is also probably the more industrial area of the Philippines too. That's about all I know. Korea. Korea is a DNA region that is kind of interesting, to be honest with you. The sad thing about Korea, the Korean region today, unfortunately, is that the two brothers are separated, and it's really crazy that these two peoples of the same ethnic DNA region are at such a war with each other. From the North Korea and South Korea, the capital of the North is Pyongyang, and the capital of the South is Seoul. I mean, something popular I know from Korea is K-pop, and nuclear missiles. Uh, I don't really know any Korean, but I know that the ancient Korean people based their countries off of ancient clans and families like the Kim and other ones, and that the idea of Korea comes from the ancient kingdom of Goguryeo, which existed in Korea at a long time ago, and after the terrible Japanese occupation of Korea, it was divided between the East and the West, and it has remained divided ever since. We can only hope that we can have the beautiful outcome that the North and the South will unite like the DNA region that they should be. Japan, or Nihongo. The capital is Tokyo. It has a long history. The first, the Jomon were the first people in Japan, Nihongo. Then another group of people came from Korea, walked into Western Nihongo, went into Japan, took over, started their culture. I forgot what they were called. Eventually, the emperor, the Tennohige, takes over. He becomes the emperor, the empires of Japan. There's a long samurai culture for many centuries. Japan is introduced to European ideology. Christians go to Japan. Many people become Christian. Samurais destroy the Christians and kick out the Europeans. Their long isolationist period. Then they open up again. By the USA comes up and opens the hell out of their front door. Says wake up, and then the Japanese are like, okay, now we're connected to everywhere else. We gotta get the game. So they learn from the Germans, French, Japanese, British, Americans how to have a strong economy, a strong military, and a strong government for the modern era. They eventually get so strong that they decide to join the Axis, and they end up conquering all of Korea, Manchuria, a lot of China. They end up joining the Axis during World War II after a skirmish with the Germans in World War One. But when they join the Axis in World War II, they feel so strong that they actually go and attack the USA in Pearl Harbor, and then the Japanese have a long war with the Americans and everybody else. And honestly, Japan, it's not Japan's fault that they lost the war. It's the Germans' fault. But anyway, Japan ends up getting nuked twice by the Americans. They surrender. I don't think it was just because of the nukes. Yeah, the nukes, but also because they were afraid of the Soviet Union. I mean, who isn't afraid of somebody who's trying to take all your food? I know I don't like being hungry. Then Japan ends up becoming part of the American gang, and they're like, okay, this is not so bad. And they stay there for a long time. Then they get really strong economically in the 1980s with all their video games, and that's a really great era for Japan. And then their economy actually broke again, and now Japan is just a regular country like most other places that is also afraid of North Korea, and still Russia, and China too. Maybe I'll go there one day, and maybe I'll try some sushi. I don't know. I went to a Japanese festival in New York. It was pretty nice. Well, this has been the ethnic DNA regions of Asia. Thank you so much for watching. I know that was a long video. Well, I hope you all have a great day.